I've worked with the paranormal all of my life. They've never given me a warning like this. When I was 8 years old, I realized I could communicate with spirits. I had been sitting on my floor playing with my toys when I heard a small voice say hello. I looked up and saw a young girl standing in front of me. She had blonde hair and brown eyes and blood dripping down the side of her head. The blood was the only strange looking thing about her, but I knew she was dead. I could just feel it. I asked what happened, and she told me she was with her father when they got in a wreck, and she woke up in the woods alone. She said she saw light in my window, so she came to me. "Can I stay with you till my daddy finds me?" she asked. "Sure," I said, shrugging. We stayed in my room most of the time, playing, and my parents just assumed I had an imaginary friend. 2 weeks passed, and she was still with me, but then I saw her picture on the news. There was a man standing on a stage crying and begging for his daughter to come home. "She's always been a troubled girl," he said. "We think she may have gone to meet this boy." He held up a picture of a boy about the same age as the girl. I noticed then she was beside me now, shaking. "Tell them to look at mile marker 16, in the woods," I told my parents. When they asked how I knew, I shrugged and said my friend told me. They argued off and on for a little while about it, but eventually they called. The cops asked me a lot of questions when they found her. I told them everything she told me. She disappeared after that, and I never really knew what became of everything, but I knew I was obsessed with the paranormal, and now, as an adult, I do a lot of paranormal investigations. As you can imagine, I've gotten a lot of warnings from ghosts, spirits, even demons, but none of them were like this. I first heard it while sitting down to dinner with my wife. Our son had since fallen asleep, tired from a long and raucous day of playing outside, and had foregone the option to eat dinner in lieu of a Justice League marathon with his Batman snuggly. Mary sat across from me taking a bite of what she named Tex-Mex smashed potatoes before declaring them the best idea she ever had. She looked at me for assurance that I enjoyed it too, and though I preferred her jambalaya, I agreed this was an excellent dinner idea. "Warn them." The voice came from inside my head. It rumbled in my ears. If it hadn't been so distinct, I would have mistaken it for a thought. It unsettled me. I have no history of hallucination, and at almost 30 I knew that most likely I would have shown symptoms before then, so at first, I ignored it. It shocked me, but I believed it was more likely that there was another spirit speaking to me in my house than for me to show symptoms of a schizoid disorder. I didn't mention it to Mary, because after a particularly unpleasant experience on a ride along with a priest to a demonic possession in Massachusetts, she refused to remain in any place where there was even a hint of paranormal activity. We went to bed shortly after dinner. I had dreams of the ocean at night. Deep dark waters with the only moonlight to light them. I dreamed of a woman standing atop the water and remaining untouched by its vicious waves. "Warn them," she whispered to me. "Warn them." I didn't understand what I was looking at. She wasn't a spirit. She wasn't a demon. She was just a woman. Heavily pregnant. I noticed then that she appeared to be standing on something and that it was moving beneath her, bringing her closer to me. The closer she came, the more I noticed her skin didn't look human. It was slick like the skin of an eel. The hair that flowed to her waist was a living thing, dancing not with the wind, but with muscle. Medusa flashed to my mind, though there weren't snakes atop her head, but a million microscopic tentacles moving at their own will. She was closing in on me, and my heart raced. I didn't want her to touch me. It seemed in my mind that would mean the end of me. The proximity did allow for me to see that despite her slick skin and strange hair, she looked otherwise human. On the heels of that realization, I noticed her otherworldly beauty, with bright green eyes that seemed to glow in the moonlight, heart-shaped lips, and high cheekbones. Despite her large pregnant belly, she had perfect breasts and long, shapely legs. She seemed to beckon me towards her, and the closer I became, the less I feared this perfect creature. Then she held her hand out to me and opened her mouth, and I saw that inside that perfect mouth were rows of deadly sharp teeth, and her jaw distended as if to swallow me whole. I backed away from her, an instinctual fear settling in the pit of my stomach. Long limbs that appeared from behind her, stretching toward me with blinding speed, gripped me by the arms and yanked me toward her. I fell face down on a hard slick surface. I heard a rumble of thunder, deafeningly loud, and felt a shock surge through my chest. The woman snapped her mouth shut and let me go. Scrambling to my feet, I became acutely aware that there was something beneath me as well, and that I too was standing atop the ocean. And when I looked down, I felt nothing but a deep desperate fear, because this thing was all I could see in the clear waters and I couldn't see its beginning or its end. Just a magnificently large creature looming down to the depths of the ocean, and I wondered what pit of hell it had crawled out of. On all sides of me, all I could see were the legs, the tentacles, of this creature branching out and reaching toward the corners of the earth, and I knew it meant to grab them and swallow them whole. Something dark in me wanted to see the creature's face, but I knew I would not survive if I did. I looked back at the woman then, terror gripping me by the throat. Warn them. The scream came from within, not from her own mouth, and I awoke covered in a sheen of sweat, clothes soaked, and the smell of the ocean clinging to my skin. I saw Mary sleeping soundly next to me and slipped out of bed quietly to shower. The woman in the dream, her terrifyingly beautiful visage, flashed into my mind as the hot water pelted my skin. As I washed my body, I felt a dull pain in my arm, the same arm the woman had grabbed me by. I looked down and saw the beginnings of what would be a bruise wrapping around my forearm in 2 perfect loops. My mind raced at the thought, had it all been real? Who was the woman? What was the creature beneath her feet? Beneath my feet? I turned off the water and stepped out of the shower. The air in the bathroom was thick with steam, but surprisingly cold. I shivered as I toweled off and wiped the mirror clean. Just for a moment, I saw the woman just behind me, a sickening smile attached to the corners of that horribly wide mouth. The appendages reached for me again, grabbing me by the throat this time. I closed my eyes and prepared to be ripped to the ground, but nothing happened. I would have thought it was all in my head, if not for a slimy sheen of salt water remaining on my throat. With shaking hands, I dressed myself and made a cup of coffee. I decided to be proactive and sat down at my computer to look at the news and see what people may need a warning about. We all know that this virus is ravaging the world, so that couldn't be it. There were no new disasters, no new weather threats, no comets hurtling towards Earth that I could see. When my wife woke up hours later, I told her about the dream, and she laughed. Sounds like someone has been mixing Lovecraft and Greek mythology. I wanted to show her the bruise, which was now a deep purple and black, and I wanted to tell her about how I heard the voice while I was awake as well. But seeing how happy she was that morning, and how silly she thought my dream was, I realized it would be better for both of us if I just laughed it off as well. I tugged at the sleeve of my shirt, making sure the bruise was covered. Our son ran in, wearing his Superman cape, and said, "I'll save you, Daddy," before giving me a hug. I smiled, unaware that he had been listening, and said, "Thanks, kid. You're just what I need." I tried to let the day go on as usual, studying footage from a supposed haunting a friend had sent to me, checking the news and weather sites to keep watch on things that we may need to be warned about, helping my wife clean the house, and playing superhero with my son. But every time I let the anxiety I woke up with begin to drain from my tired bones, something would push on that bruise, and I would feel that anxious pit in my stomach once again. That night our son asked if I could put him to bed and read him a story, and I was happy to oblige. I tucked him in and sat down next to him to read Pete the cat. After the story he was fast asleep. I kissed his forehead and snuck towards the door to switch off the light when I felt a hand grip my forearm and a deep demonic voice say, "Warn them." I jumped and spun around, but my son was still in bed, fast asleep. I rubbed my bruise and felt the hair on my arm stand on end. I creeped back towards my son's bed slowly, looking for any sign that he was awake and messing with me, but his even breathing and relaxed position told me he hadn't moved. I walked out of his room again, a renewed sense of dread filling the pit of my stomach, and went to find my wife in the kitchen making herself a cup of tea. She had the TV on in the background, tuned into the news, and I sat on the couch and listened as the anchor said that an unexpected upside of this worldwide pandemic was that the earth was healing itself. Pictures flashed of dolphins in the canals in Italy, something that we haven't seen in 100 years. I read on Facebook that scientists are saying there could be a return of species previously thought extinct or close to being extinct because of this too. No one going out to hunt them or screw up their habitat. My wife said, sitting next to me on the couch. Really? I said. I thought about the strangely beautiful woman and the creature from my dream. Yes, you should warn them. My head snapped towards my wife, and for a moment she wasn't my wife at all, but a waterlogged corpse reaching for me. Water poured from its mouth and the skin on its face and chest was sloughing off and falling toward the floor. It could barely move, but reached for me desperately, as if holding on to me would keep it from dying. The water pooling around it and dripping from its every orifice had a putrid odor that stung my eyes. About what? What do I need to warn them about? I asked, backing away from it, heart pounding in my ears. I said you should look it up. Are you okay? I rubbed my eyes and looked at her, now herself again, sitting next to me looking concerned. Yeah, I'm fine. That dream just got to me more than I was expecting is all. I tried to laugh to ease the tension, but it came out as a bark. I slapped my palms against my legs and rose to my feet. Okay, I think I'm gonna go lay down. She raised an eyebrow at me, noting my odd behavior, but only nodded and asked for a kiss. If you need me, I'll be in here, okay? I'm coming to bed once I've had my fill of peppermint tea and murder mysteries. I smiled at her, taking in her lovely dry features, before saying I would, and giving her a kiss. I laid down, hoping that if I saw the creatures again, I would be able to ask what the warning was and who I was meant to give it to. That night the dream was different. Instead of the ocean, I was in a place ravaged by fire. Ash flew around me, and I saw that I was standing on a rock only feet above a river of lava. There was a woman in front of me again, but she also was different than the last. Her long hair moved slowly around her, grasping onto her arms and body, and reaching in every direction for something to hold onto. Her skin looked like it was made of thick exoskeleton, similar to a scorpion, with cracks on every movable part of her body glowing bright orange. Her eyes shone with an unsettling golden hue. She too was heavily pregnant, and I once again realized she was moving closer to me, and I was moving toward her. I knew, beneath us, living in the lava, was a creature like the one in the ocean the night before. This one spit out of the depths of the earth by a volcano. The woman opened her mouth, and with it, I saw sharpened fangs pointing every which way, the plates on her lips moving further and further apart, and allowing a glowing fire to seep through, making the inside of her mouth look like it was dancing in the heat. Warn them. The voice inside her screamed again. What should I warn them about? I screamed back. What does this mean? I begged myself not to wake up, hoping for an answer, but watching the woman closely to avoid being ripped into the fire beneath me. I could feel the heat radiating off of it and stinging my skin. She pulled closer and closer to me, and I knew in my soul that letting her touch me would mean the end of me, but I pressed on, watching her mouth grow wider, screaming for an answer until she was so close I could see into her throat. In her throat I saw the eyes of a man, blackened like coal, burned nearly beyond recognition, if not for his eyes. Warn them. Warn them. Warn them. He screamed with such terror I felt myself screaming as well. I don't remember anything after that. I awoke on the floor with my wife in front of me gripping my shoulders, and my son standing in the corner, tears in his eyes, staring at me. My wife said I had been screaming at the top of my lungs in a voice that didn't sound like my own. When I asked her what I said, she began to cry, and I held her close. She refused to tell me for most of the day. She said she worried that I would feel like I had to share it, and if I did, I would sound like a madman, angry at the world. Finally, later that day, after many failed attempts to get her to talk to me, she handed me a slip of paper. It said this: "We have warned you time and time again, and you have not listened. We have warned you with fire, with water, with pestilence, with storms. You have polluted our air and made it impossible for us to reach our scribes. You have left the poor to suffer in your pollution as you protect yourself and lie to them saying they should be calm. You have created bombs to strike fear into your enemies. You have fought wars and killed to keep yourself in positions of power. Every day you force those with no options to kill the innocent in the name of power. This is a warning to you. The ones in power, the ones that hold all of the cards and use them to cause others to submit. Heed our warning. This virus that is ravaging you is only the beginning. We know our scribes will hear us now. They will tell you to stop letting greed and arrogance cause you to ruin the lives of those you see as beneath you. They will tell you to stop fighting wars in the name of power. They will tell you to stop polluting the earth in the name of riches. Heed their warning, for the next time we will not let you stay safely in your palaces while the poor and downtrodden suffer. We will not allow you to use the least of you to keep your precious economy running as you hide yourself away. We will come for you. We will destroy you. Your God created us. He gave us the power to do these things to you who do evil in his name. He gave the power to smite the ones that call themselves good and hide themselves away when the lowly suffer. He will not help you when you send him your prayers. Your time is almost up. We are the ancient ones. We are what you call hell. We are on earth. You are the evil that has brought this plague upon you. You will not survive us.